To fully grasp the Israel-Palestine conflict, we delve into its deep historical roots. Long before the modern cities and state lines, the region now known as Israel and Palestine was a cradle of civilization. It was a melting pot of cultures, religions, and empires, each leaving its indelible mark on the land and its people. The Jewish people, tracing their lineage back to the biblical patriarchs, established the ancient kingdoms of Israel and Judah. This land to them is not just a home, it's the promised land, the epicenter of their spiritual and historical identity. But this region isn't significant to just one group. It's also venerated by the Arab Muslims. After the birth of Islam in the 7th century, Arab Muslims began to migrate into this region, drawn by the allure of Jerusalem, the third holiest city in Islam. They established their rule, leaving a lasting influence on the culture, language, and faith of the area. The Roman Empire too had its sights set on this coveted land. In the 1st century they seized control, rechristening it as Syria Palestina. With the fall of the Roman Empire, the region changed hands numerous times, reflecting the turbulent ebb and flow of history. But through it all, one thing remained constant: the deep-seated connection of both Jews and Muslims to this land. These ancient roots run deep, intertwining and overlapping, creating a complex tapestry of shared history and divergent narratives. In the coming centuries, the region would see crusaders and caliphs, Ottomans and Britons, each contributing another layer to the intricate history of this land. Yet, the ancient bonds of Jews and Muslims to this region never waned. This shared yet contested heritage set the stage for the modern-day Israel-Palestine conflict, a dispute not just over land, but over history, identity, and belonging. As we move forward, you'll see how these ancient roots still influence the conflict today. Fast forward to the Ottoman Empire's rule, a time of relative peace that was disrupted by World War I. The Ottoman Empire, a vast power stretching from Southeast Europe to Western Asia and North Africa, held sway over the region we now call Israel and Palestine for over 4 centuries. During this time, diverse communities of Jews, Christians, and Muslims lived under the same banner, each with their own customs and traditions. But this era of relative coexistence was shattered with the outbreak of World War I. The Ottomans sided with the Central Powers, including Germany and Austria-Hungary, against the Allies. This decision would prove to have far-reaching consequences. As the war raged, the Ottoman Empire began to crumble under the strain. Their defeat in 1918 marked the end of a centuries-long reign and left a power vacuum in its wake. The victorious Allies, primarily Britain and France, stepped in to fill the void. Under the secret Sykes-Picot Agreement, Britain and France carved up the Ottoman territories between themselves, drawing arbitrary lines on the map that paid little heed to the ethnic, religious, and cultural differences of the people living there. The region known as Palestine fell under British control, setting the stage for the next chapter in this historical narrative. This division of the Ottoman Empire's former territories was a critical turning point. It stoked resentment and sparked tensions among the different communities in the region. The arbitrary borders sowed the seeds of conflict among people who had once lived relatively peacefully under Ottoman rule. In the aftermath of World War I, the victorious powers were more interested in asserting their own influence than in the welfare of the local populations. Their actions sowed discord among the diverse communities in the region, fueling tensions that would erupt into conflict in the decades to come. The seeds of conflict were sown, and the stage was set for a century of turmoil. The Balfour Declaration and the British Mandate were two pivotal events that further complicated the situation. The Balfour Declaration, a brief letter written by British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour in November of 1917, promised the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. While it may have been short, its implications were far-reaching and enduring. This declaration was not a casual promise, but a commitment made by one of the world's most powerful nations. It sparked a beacon of hope for Jews worldwide who had long dreamt of a homeland. However, the Balfour Declaration was not devoid of controversy. the land of Palestine was not uninhabited or unclaimed. It was home to a substantial Arab population who had been living there for centuries. The declaration, in their eyes, was a betrayal, promising away their homeland without their consent. Enter the British Mandate, a period from 1920 to 1948, when Britain was assigned by the League of Nations to administer Palestine. This mandate came with a delicate balancing act. On one side, the British had to uphold the promise made in the Balfour Declaration. On the other, they had to manage the increasing tensions between the Jewish immigrants flowing into Palestine and the existing Arab population. The British attempted to control immigration and land sales to Jews, causing resentment among the Jewish community, who saw this as a betrayal of the Balfour Declaration. At the same time, the Arab community was growing increasingly frustrated and fearful of losing their homeland to the incoming Jewish immigrants. This period was marked by rising tensions, violent incidents, and failed attempts at peace. The British, unable to manage the escalating conflict, eventually turned the problem over to the United Nations in 1947. The promise of a homeland ignited hopes for Jews worldwide, but also lit the fuse for a devastating conflict. The birth of Israel in 1948 was a moment of joy for Jews, but a catastrophe, or Nakba, for Palestinians. This period marked a significant turning point in the history of the Middle East. Following World War II and the horrors of the Holocaust, the United Nations proposed a partition plan in 1947. This plan aimed to divide British-controlled Palestine into separate Jewish and Arab states, with Jerusalem under international administration. Jewish leaders accepted the proposal, viewing it as a crucial step towards fulfilling their long-held dream of a Jewish homeland. However, the Palestinian Arabs, who made up the majority population in the region, vehemently rejected the partition. They saw it as a direct violation of their rights to self-determination. The international community's decision to move forward with the partition plan ignited widespread tension and violence between Jews and Arabs in Palestine. On May 14, 1948, the State of Israel was officially declared, marking a momentous occasion for Jews worldwide. However, for Palestinians, this event signified the beginning of what they refer to as the Nakba, or catastrophe. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were displaced from their homes, either fleeing the violence or forcibly expelled. This event sparked a refugee crisis that still echoes today. Almost immediately after Israel's declaration of independence, neighboring Arab states, who had opposed the partition plan, launched a military intervention. This was the start of the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. By the time armistice agreements were signed in 1949, Israel had not only survived the onslaught, but had expanded its territory beyond the original UN partition plan. The war and Israel's birth resulted in profound and lasting changes. For Jews, Israel became a beacon of hope and a place of refuge. For Palestinians, it marked the beginning of statelessness and displacement. The territorial disputes born from this period continue to fuel conflict and negotiations in the present day. The 1948 war transformed the region, setting the stage for decades of conflict and negotiations. The events of this period have had long-lasting effects, shaping the course of Middle Eastern history and continuing to influence events today. The history of the Israel-Palestine conflict is complex and deeply rooted, with no easy solutions. This sentence encapsulates our journey through this historical landscape so far. We began by delving into the ancient roots of the region, where the seeds of conflict were sown. We saw how the land, considered holy by three of the world's major religions, became a crucible for competing nationalisms and religious affiliations, setting the stage for a clash of identities. Our exploration then took us to the era of the Ottoman Empire, where the region existed under a seemingly stable but complex system of governance. The eruption of World War I, however, brought about seismic changes. As the Ottoman Empire crumbled, the great powers of the time, particularly Britain, stepped in, and the region's future became even more uncertain. We then navigated the intricate turns of the Balfour Declaration and the British Mandate. The Balfour Declaration, a brief but momentous letter, expressed Britain's support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. This announcement and the subsequent British Mandate intensified the nationalistic aspirations of both the Jewish and Palestinian populations, further complicating the region's dynamics. Our journey finally brought us to the birth of Israel and the War of 1948. The creation of the Jewish state, in the aftermath of the horrific Holocaust, was a moment of triumph for many Jews worldwide. However, for the Palestinians, it marked the onset of what they term Nakba, or the catastrophe, as many were displaced from their homes. In this intricate tapestry of history, we see a slew of influences and events that have shaped the Israel-Palestine conflict as we know it today. And yet, it is but a part of the story. Understanding the past is crucial to navigating the future. As we move into discussing the modern conflict in the next part, keep these historical events in mind.